It's hard to imagine in 2024 that car manufacturers still can't build a vehicle with engines that last over 100,000 miles, whether it's blown turbos, broken wastegates, catastrophic hold pistons, or even broken ringlands. There's a whole host of issues and catastrophic failures that a lot of these vehicles are subject to. It's unfathomable that these car manufacturers just can't get it right. With the cost of these vehicles nowadays, we should never be tolerant of vehicles that are built to such low standards. I'm going to give you a list of some of the worst used vehicles and the trash engines in 2024 you're going to want to avoid like the plague. Let's get into it now.
Life's too short to drive boring cars.
And right here we have the first candidate for some of the worst engines. Obviously we're dealing with a BMW, and this is one of their sportier SUVs, and it's typically on the larger scale. This is an X6, and you'll notice the Denotion M50i has all kinds of great detailing on it, and it's sporty, and it's fast, and it's furious. But the engine under that hood is one of the worst engines you could possibly dream of. Now, you'll find that engine in vehicles like the X6, the X5, the X7. You'll also find it in some of their vehicles, the 5, 6, 7 series vehicles and beyond. And what it actually has is a twin turbo V8 engine. It's direct injection, it's timing chain driven, but it is extremely complex, extremely expensive to maintain. And the big problem is that twin turbo is called a hot V like this. And what it means is they've got two turbos that they go and place within that V of that 8. And of course, they did all of that in all of their infinite wisdom to create this quicker spool up time because it's mounted closer to the exhaust manifold. And then as it's re-injecting the pressure back in, it's very close to the intake manifold. Results, more power, less pressure drop, and quicker spool up time. Better performance. But all that heat in that hot V creates a lot of problems. And while the newer generations are slightly improved with better shielding and a slightly revised fuel system, a lot of these N63 engines that you'll find under here, this twin turbo V8, has had a whole multitude of issues. Now, firstly, a lot of these vehicles, for some reason, suffer heavy battery drain, but the engine itself, the turbos have been known to cook. The turbos themselves can blow valve guide seals, and the seals then create external smoke, a lot of heavy oil consumption in a lot of these vehicles with those engines. And then you wonder why, scratching your head, why is this thing burning so much oil? And the worst part is that oil's not cheap. At $12 to $15 a quart, it's going to cost you, and you've got to put an extra quart in there probably every 300, 400, 500 miles just to keep it on the road. You don't want to run out of oil. There's all kinds of other plastics under that engine compartment, and those turbos start to take a toll on plastic fittings, cooling lines. But on top of it, you can also get water pump failures, which are highly known. Of course, oil filter housing failures, pan gasket failures, all kinds of oil and coolant leaks issues with these vehicles, rattling timing chains or catastrophic timing chain failures altogether, meaning that this vehicle is not only unreliable, it's extremely expensive to service, maintain, and keep on the road. And I dare anybody to show me an example of a N63 engine that they've seen with over 100,000 miles on it, and they haven't put at least 50 grand in service and maintenance. I dare you. The next junk engine belongs in this vehicle here. Of course, it's the Hyundai brand as well as Kia, and they have gotten and garnered a lot of reputation for bad failures. Of course, we're dealing with a 2011 to 2021 2-liter turbocharged direct injected engine, and the Theta 2 specifically is one that comes to mind, where they're dealing with millions of catastrophic engine failures to the point where there's a backlog in getting new engines shipped to the customers. Yet you can get results in hesitation, weird engine sounds, lacking starting, stalling, blowing smoke out the back, or catastrophic engine failures are all some significant reasons and signs and symptoms of these vehicles. Once you know the beginning of the end is near, that's some of the sounds and factors you're going to hear. I personally know somebody who actually had to trade their old junk in. Their vehicle didn't have a ton of miles on it, and yet it developed a rod knock. They took it into the dealer because it was running rough with that knock and a check engine light, and they were told, you're going to need a new engine. It's sad. There's millions of people on that list for recalls to get new engines, and the Theta 2 engine by Hyundai and Kia are ones you're definitely going to want to avoid like the plague. The next manufacturer that has some of the worst engines, right here we're talking about the 4 Rings of Despair by Audi, as well as the 4-cylinder engine you'll find in this particular car, and we're dealing with Volkswagen. That's right, the VAG group, Volkswagen and Audi use this 2-liter turbocharged engine that they've had for many, many years, it's created a whole pile of issues. Even the latest 1.4 and 1.5 liter turbocharged engine are creating issues. There have been fuel leaks, there's been problems with hesitation, drivability, surging, and even a lot of complaints exist around the latest generation of the smaller turbo engines. They're simply working too hard for the type of vehicle they're trying to move down the road. But even the older 2-liter engines have always been a problem. I've said this for many years, the A4 has been one of those vehicles by Audi that has known to have a whole multitude of issues. But any of these Volkswagen vehicles share a derivative of that EA888 engine are going to find a problem. Lots of problems. The kind of problems you're going to find related to carbon fouling, you're going to find turbocharge failures, coolant leaks, and of course the infamous water pump. There's definitely going to be leaks from top to bottom, coolant, oil, and everything in between. Unexpected repairs, O2 sensors, you name it. When one thing gets fixed, the next thing pops out, and it feels like it's a never-ending trip either to the dealer to get it fixed by the manufacturer or just a trip to the parts store so you can fix on it almost every single weekend. Especially as these vehicles age, you're finding more and more and more problems. They simply just don't have what it takes to last, and any of those 2-liter turbocharged engines by the VAG group, the Volkswagen Audi group, are simply the best to avoid. And right here's the next contestant. We're dealing with the Ford Escape and of course the infamously unreliable EcoBoost engine, as you'll notice right here wrapped in this vehicle. Now, specifically, we're talking about the 3-cylinder engines that are at the absolute worst. For example, the Fiesta and the Ford Focus that rocked that 3-cylinder turbocharged engine. It was a 1-liter, very problematic, as well as the 1.5-liter turbocharged EcoBoost engine, also very problematic. These vehicles have struggled with reliability from top to bottom. Not only that, a lot of these vehicles also had the power shift transmission, which just added insult to injury, where there was a dry dual clutch system and very prone to failure. But the 1-liter turbocharged 3-cylinder engine EcoBoost has had a multitude of issues, from timing chain failures, rough idle, stalling, and catastrophic engine failures. That 1-liter turbo engine and the direct injection is absolute one to avoid. And the worst part is now the latest 1.5 is also becoming a problem. We're finding a multitude of engine failures because the use of belts to drive the oil pump as well as the timing belt are all submersed in oil, and a catastrophic failure imminent and waiting to happen, as many customers have actually already found, unfortunately, the hard way. The engines are not built to last. They're a dumpster fire on wheels. The engines are designed, in my opinion, to a very substandard, light-duty, light-grade way, and they're clearly not built to last. A lot of people say the EcoBoost engines that are V6s that you find in a lot of the pickup trucks like you're finding in the F-150 right here, some feel that they're actually a lot better. The 2.7-liter V6, some say, is a decent engine. Although that being said, some of the latest engines that we're finding in the Ford F-150s as well as the full-size Bronco, like we notice right here, we'll see a Bronco and an F-150 parked side by each, can get a base 2.7, and there's been a problem with dropping valves. And a lot of those V6 EcoBoost engines have had issues with cam phaser timing issues, turbochargers, as well as, again, dropping valves, and the recall has had to address some major catastrophic engine failures. Because of the severity of failures, with catastrophic engine failures, huge maintenance costs, cam phaser issues, strange noises on cold startup, often means the EcoBoost engine, whether in V6, 3-cylinder format, or even the 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder direct injected format, is bad too, because you can also get coolant consumption, head gaskets blowing, and just about every other catastrophic failure known to mankind. And another pair of engines that won't make it 100,000 miles belong to the JLR group. Jaguar, of course, in the F-Pace, and as well as the F-Type, you can get a supercharged V6 and a supercharged V8, as well as the Range Rover Sport, you can also get a supercharged V8 engine, both 5 liters here, 3 liters there. And while they're a lot of fun, they make some of the best sounds in the globe and of any stock vehicle, the sad part is they have a whole multitude of issues, and they likely won't make it anywhere near 100,000 miles. Things, for example, like coolant leaks, oil leaks, the rear differential on a lot of the vehicles that sport the supercharged V8 have a vent system that, if you don't take care of it, will blow out the rear differential. Could cost you $10,000. The engine is known for catastrophic timing chain issues, O2 sensors, fuel injectors are problematic, and the snorkel from the supercharger starts to rattle and make noise and then costs you thousands of dollars. As well, on the V6 and the V8 engines, you have a coolant Y pipe that comes factory as plastic. It has a seam on it, and when it splits, not if, but when it splits, it will dump coolant everywhere, thus potentially overheating your engine. And while most of these Jaguars carry and sport the ZF automatic transmission, that's about the only super reliable component within these vehicles, because the electrics let you down. The electrics, there's always issues with infotainment, but the big problem is the engine. Unfortunately, the supercharged V6 and V8 engines, while they are fun and sound great, they have a multitude of oil leaks, coolant leaks, chain problems. And the worst part is they're one of the most expensive vehicles to service on an annual basis. Unless you have an extra $3,000 or $4,000 to lay around every single year just to keep the vehicle on the road, you might think twice. And right here's the next vehicle. It's actually extremely fun. Shout out Mario, JCW. Obviously has one of these vehicles. A friend of mine actually has a great, fun, spry little vehicle. But unfortunately, a lot of these Minis by BMW are vehicles that aren't necessarily the most reliable. They're a lot of fun, they're a hoot. Of course, you get some great headlights and all kinds of great detailing. Who doesn't like a Mini Cooper? Of course, since BMW took it over, unfortunately, there are many problems. And some of the engines that we're talking about are most problematic are what they call the Prince engine. Think N14 by BMW, Valvetronic, all kinds of other technology. But unfortunately, we have a drivetrain that is difficult to maintain, problematic, water pumps, coolant leaks, oil consumption, catastrophic engine failures. There are a lot of issues typical with BMW, and the maintenance costs are through the roof. You think it's a small, easily affordable vehicle until you have to start maintaining it and realize that, wait a minute, I've got to check in at the BMW service department to get it maintained. They are problematic with coolant, oil leaks, you name it, and they have a bad history. So second generation of the Mini, specifically with the Prince engine, N14, from 2006 to about 2013 are the ones, the N14s you're going to want to avoid. Things got better, and now we're in a place where finally they manufacture drivetrains that are actually quite reliable, and consumers reports actually gives more or less, from my perspective, a green light on the latest generation of the Coopers and the Minis. But unfortunately, that second generation had some engines, the Prince engines, that were more trouble than they were worth. And what do we have here? A vehicle that's essentially a makeshift recycle bin for the engine that's under the hood. And this one features a General Motors 3.6 liter V6. That's right, the 3.6 liter V6 engine that you find in this Cadillac, you find it in a multitude of different General Motors vehicles I don't need to get into, but also the 2.4 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, equally as bad. So General Motors has had a real run of some of their turbocharged drivetrains. We think about the Chevy Cruze, also has some bad engines, but this 3.6 and the 2.4 turbo have been very problematic. Timing chain issues, catastrophic failures, oil consumption, low oil pressure, knocking,
pinging, coolant leaks, water pump failures, gaskets, oil, coolant, you name it.
I mean, the list goes on and on. And while there's a lot of people that are very happy with their experience with some of these engines, the 3.6 has gotten slightly better. The earlier generations were absolutely horrific. They have certainly gotten better, and there's a lot of people that are driving a late model version of a 3.6 and they're totally happy with it. And that really goes for a lot of these manufacturers and a lot of these engines that I'm sharing in this video. While I can list off some of the most problematic engines, the most significance in terms of failure rates, the fact remains is there's still always going to be a lot of happy customers that drive a lot of these vehicles, that drive them relatively trouble-free. I'm just talking about a problem that's in the numbers. If you were to put money down on the table in the casino, you'd probably bet on some of these most problematic engines that I've just given you to have a much higher failure rate, and therefore you could strike it big at the casino. And with all of that said, we all work so hard for our money. You're gonna wanna check out that video. That's my massive mega compilation of all of the most reliable used vehicles you can actually find today. You're gonna wanna check that out if you've been shopping for a used car. That's going to be your go-to list. Hope to see each and every one on the next one. See you real soon. Bye-bye.